Hi everyone, welcome back to the talk that we are having with the author of Ash and the Midas Touch, which is a new upcoming book by Catherine J. Elliss, who also runs her foundation, which is Imagining to a Better World. She is a social entrepreneur. And we have had few questions regarding this particular book and what inspired her in the first two parts of it. This is the third part. And I'm going to start by asking her, how is this book relevant to today's society? So if you don't know what about the book itself, please
Mhm.
go back and watch the first two parts. So Catherine, back to you. Why is
Yep.
this book or how is this book relevant?
Okay, I believe this book is more relevant than ever before in our lives. And it's also more relevant, increasingly so, even by the day. A lot of people don't realize that if you spend all your money, you're actually heading towards bankruptcy. So, and this is part of what I teach. So those of you who have been following me on my social enterprise, Imagineering to a Better World, or a video series at different channels, you will know that income minus expenses equals your future. And so all of us, we have a certain amount of income coming in. And if we spend more than we have, we're actually heading towards bankruptcy. And that's true if we're an individual, an organization, or if we are a country. And so, unfortunately, at the moment with COVID and all of these different things that are happening around the world, we've got people spending billions and even trillions of dollars that they don't have, especially countries. And we can only hide those consequences of that for a certain period of time. There has to come a time where your natural things come in. Like if you're spending too much money, okay, well, one, where is the money coming from? And so, it's like if I've seen this so many times with young people. Perhaps I'm a young, trendy person who loves me, taking all the selfie shots, blah, 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 and being very trendy online with everything. But I'm not paying my own bill. Maybe I'm talking to my friends all the time, but then the parents get the bill. Sometimes the parents have bills worth thousands of dollars on their phone, but they don't have thousands of dollars. So I've actually seen even something as simple as a teenager or a young adult having a telephone in their own name, but not understanding how money works, has actually made their parents even lose their house. It's huge. And for some reason, we're sort of not seeing that so much at the moment. It's like we're living in this false economy in some ways. And I'm quite fortunate. I've been through quite a few different economic crises, especially having lived in different countries. And yeah, so that's another conversation for another time. But I believe we're coming into a time where
it's 10 o'clock.
Oh, that must be yours. Yeah, so we're coming into a time where the consequences of our actions and overspending we will see. And so the economy will be changing. And so increasingly we will see, okay, just as an example, going back to the 2008 financial world global economic crisis or global financial crisis, nothing was really changed. Like nothing really was fixed in that time. So there has to be a time of just, things settling. So
I think regarding the crisis that you mentioned that you have seen, and definitely because you said you are lucky that you have seen that, means you have learned something from it, and and I think this is quite similar to what's happening nowadays in this time. So, is there any subject that is currently trending in the news that relates to your book?
yeah, on mainstream news, it's not really hitting it just yet. But if you look at more alternative news or more specific news, so say, for example, I watch a lot of economic, political, even I follow, ones like even Stansberry Research or, all these different ones that talk about gold, for example. So I look at the different markets And because I have lived, for example, in East Timor, I have lived in Indonesia, I have gone through massive economic changes where my pay, for example, has halved in a day because the exchange rate has changed. I have been there when there's been runs on banks where the banks have closed. So if you don't have cash on hand, I have been there where they've shut down the television, for example. And it's basically only been the government putting through the news. So I've lived through this before repeatedly. So yeah, it's and history doesn't change. So so from that point of view, it is definitely being spoken about, but not necessarily on mainstream news. So in Australia, I would say one of the news programs, which is a little bit more balanced, I would say, is Sky News. And not to say I agree with everything on Sky News, but I think it's much more balanced. And then, you know, like I said, looking at gold or you know, whatever it is, there's different parts of the economy that sort of shift a lot. And then there's all the conversations with Bitcoin, but everything comes back to money.
Yeah.
So as an example, if we understand the basics of money, we won't get caught up, we won't lose our house, or we won't get into all of this trouble where we will have absolutely nothing. Like, and just by the way, Ishani has interviewed me before on one of my podcasts, which is Women's Wisdom Through the Ages. And I talk about different things that's happened in my life. And I've had times where I haven't had much money at all, but I've had times where I have had quite a lot of money. And mine's not from me being stupid and wasting money, but it's, you know, a couple of times getting caught up, you know, in economic crises. One time when I relocated, I wasn't able to find work for an extended period of time. And for different reasons, the business wasn't going ahead at that time. So I've lived here and I've lived here. And so, and again, that's why I'm so passionate to get these ones out. And especially in the coming days, the coming weeks, the coming months, there's more and more people that will see, like the mainstream media says there's no inflation in America, for example. But I was watching a program just earlier this week and just talking about the cost of steel and the cost of wood for a home has gone up over 100% in a year. And so people aren't talking about it on the mainstream news. But if you're going outside the mainstream news that are all owned by the same companies, by the way, then you get more of a balanced perspective.
Yes, and I think you have very beautifully poured in all your experiences, your knowledge, the expertise that you have built in the past over 2 decades, 3 decades, I think, in this book in a very, very easy and very understandable way for the people who read it. So thank you so much, Catherine, for this particular segment. I think it was one of very important segments to understand where your ideas and your knowledge stems from and why have you written this book. So if you haven't read this book or you're interested to read this book, you can actually have a copy from Amazon where you have the e-copy of this book, Ash and the Midas Touch. Or you can also go on the website, which is im2.tv, which is I for Imagineering 2.tv.
Yes.
Yeah, is that
yes. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
That's right.
So please go on the website to order your own hard copy.
Yeah.
And thank you, Catherine, for this segment. And we will catch you soon in the another segment with a few more questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Ishani. See you guys in the next